Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Tommo, and welcome to my 2024 Italian Grand Prix post-race Chinwag. Thank you all for joining me to bathe in the glory of a Charles Leclerc Ferrari win in Monza. There's something about it, isn't there? There's something about it. It hits differently, especially when it's not to be expected. This kind of came a bit out of nowhere. We knew they would bring upgrades this weekend to Monza. They always seem to love a Monza spec car, don't they, Ferrari? They're all about the vibes of winning at home. And the positive momentum we're potentially going to get off the back of this. The new floor, is that going to work as well in Baku, in Singapore, for the rest of the season? Perhaps, fingers crossed, because a 4-car title fight is exactly what we need in 2025. And tell you what, only 30 points behind Red Bull in the Constructors. Is it McLaren in the Constructors? Either way, Ferrari could absolutely jump Red Bull in the Constructors. That could absolutely happen. But we will get into it. Welcome Halita, Aryan, Hani, Road Rage, Vladimir, Rickster, Dan, FH4, Liam, Kirsten, Rainer, Avkid, and everyone else who's watching this live on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who's after the fact. And I've just spoilt my race rating. But there we go. For me, it's a 7 out of 10. For you, I've already put the poll out. In fact, I've already put the poll out. And 30% of you agree it's a 7 out of 10. 8% a 6 or lower. 38% gave it an 8. 23% a 9 or above. It was a race. Was it an absolute worldie? The story of Charles Leclerc and a Ferrari winning at the end was great. But it was one of them. It was a burner. It was a slow burner. McLaren looked to be in quite a dominant position with Oscar Piastri, and we'll talk about how he got there anyway. And then all of a sudden, Ferrari were like, hang on, we're just not going to stop again. We're just going to carry on. We think these tyres are actually going to last to the end. Charles Leclerc is going to be able to make them last to the end. Even Carlos Sainz, remember him on the radio being like, oh, all these lot stopping, they're going to have to stop again. Even Carlos said it in the other Ferrari. Yet they made it work. They made the one-stop work, and Charles Leclerc delivered the win. I think a 7 out of 10 is a fair rating for what was a good race. It was iconic for off-track reasons, for the fact that it was Ferrari, for the fact that it was Charles Leclerc in a Ferrari winning. But the race itself was very good. Mate, I was considering an 8. The vibes almost gave it an 8, but for me, it's a 7 out of 10. Okay, it was a mild banger, AV. I do agree. And yes, make sure audio only, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check it out, okay? I've given it a 7 out of 10. 32% of you agreed, actually. 40% of you have given it an 8. 21% of you gave it a 9 or above. So shout out all the Tifosi out there and the Charles Leclerc fans, because, damn, these ones, they certainly hit different when they're not expected as well. That's the thing, right? Because it felt like Charles was going to have to settle for P3, didn't it? And then all of a sudden it's like, hang on a second, there's not actually that many laps left. And Charles got like a double-digit gap to Piastri. And yes, of course, Oscar chipped away at the end. 2.6 seconds by race end was the gap. But damn, if it had been a scrap right at the end between Charles and Oscar, because you know Charles would have gone down kicking and screaming if Oscar had caught him. He needed maybe 2 more laps. I want to say 2 more. That gap did come right sharp at the end, but I'm sure Charles kind of knew Oscar wasn't going to be able to get him at some point, and then could kind of crack on and get things going. But yes, race rating is 7 out of 10. For me, I think that's fair. So, race result. How did things pan out? Well, Charles Leclerc won the Italian Grand Prix, 2024 Italian Grand Prix. He got it done in the end, and McLaren 1-2 down to 2-3. Now, of course, there are many ways to look at this. I think a big part of it was that you can experiment more when you're not winning, okay? Part of the reason why George was able to go for the mad strat that he did in Spa, in Belgium, was because he was nowhere, right? And he went for it, and it worked until it didn't work, of course, post-race. Charles was running P2. The one stop, Ferrari at Monza, you know what? Let's give Charles track position and let's make McLaren's passing, okay? And they were able to make that risky call that barely any other team made. I think Albon did in his Williams, I want to say. But yeah, so it's one of them that when you are leading, you have more to lose. Taking that risky decision, it feels like more of a risk, exponentially more of a risk than when you've got nothing to lose. So Ferrari went for it with both Charles and Carlos. In fact, Carlos pitted like 5 laps after Charles. Yeah, Charles was able to make the tyres last, which is incredible. Incredible job from Ferrari. Can't state that highly enough. And McLaren weren't able to convert on the 1-2. Weren't able to convert. Sad times, especially given Max Verstappen was P6, just behind Lewis Hamilton in P5. Russell P7, Perez P8 yet again. P9 Albon, best of the rest, which as an Albon fan, got to take those. Great drive from Alex in the end. He cut that corner in the first chicane a couple of times, didn't he? But I think he was just trying to get out of the way and preserve his opportunity. But yeah, great drive from Alex, well done. And then Kevin Magnussen with a 10-second penalty still gets top 10, but gets 2 super license points, which means that he's banned. He will not race in Baku. He will not race in Azerbaijan. He will almost certainly be replaced by Ollie Behrman, who will be taking his seat next year anyway, and is available. Ferrari need to confirm it, but I mean, that's absolutely going to happen. Very harsh penalty points. Magnussen was for sure in the wrong with his, contact with Gasly, but to give him 2 penalty points for that, I don't know. Gasly even agreed. Gasly was like, no, I don't agree with that. So, yeah, Magnussen will not be racing in Baku. And actually, Ollie Behrman's a bit of a Baku merchant. He loves it round there, does Ollie. So, this has his quick in a straight line as well. Points for Ollie Behrman in Baku could absolutely be on. But anyway, Fernando Alonso, P11, just 0.19 of a second away from Kevin Magnussen having served his penalty, but just outside of the points. Oh, Fernando. Oh, Aston Martin. It has not been good, has it? It's not looking good. Franco Colapinto, P12 in the end. P12 on debut, recovered from P18 in qualifying to P12 in the race. Very good job. Finished about 14 seconds shy of Alex Albon in the end. I think that's pretty decent. And I don't think Logan would have done much better than that, if not worse. 14 seconds behind Alex Albon by the end. I feel like Logan put in a lot of races way further back than that from Alex. So, fair play. Ocon Gasly 14-15, a bad weekend for Alpine. No surprise, no particular craziness, just they have a power unit deficit, didn't they? But they both got out of Q1, which was in itself impressive. Bottas P16, Hulkenberg 17, harpooned Yuki, didn't he? But then also got squeezed off by Daniel Ricciardo, which is very naughty from Daniel. Joe P18, Stroll P19, pitted at the end for the soft tyre, but was an absolute mile off Fernando Alonso all race. And yes, of course, Ricciardo, he had his 15-second penalty. And what could have been for Daniel if he hadn't have the knock-on effect of him squeezing Hulkenberg on the first lap? He could have had a points race, I think, for sure, given the gaps, right? And given he got a 5-second for that and then a 10-second penalty because that the front wing person touched the car. You could see it. You could see they knew. They were like, no, what have I done? Like in that instance, they probably should have put their hand up and been like, serve it again, I'll touch the car. But I don't know, is that allowed? No, I'm not sure. But I felt for the I felt for that Racing Bulls mechanic, pit crew person. That was tough. And then Yuki Tsunoda did not finish after he got harpooned by Nico Hulkenberg. So, that's how the race finished. This is how the driver standings look after 16 of 24 races. We now have 22 drivers and Valtteri Bottas is still last. He's still last. Franco Colapinto on debut, P12, a higher best finishing position than Valtteri Bottas has managed all season. Wow. That is incredibly tough, but game's the game. Don't make the rules. Right, so movers and shakers. Albon gains a position, swaps with Esteban Ocon, 2 points on the board, so he goes from 4 to 6 points. There's Alex. And that's it. Apart from Colapinto, of course, jumping Bottas. That is it. But yes, we have a symmetrical graph, which is nice, Arjen. I agree. I like it. Yeah, Bottas has been so unlucky. He does not deserve to be last. Sargent and Joe absolutely deserve to be last. And they're 19th and 20th, which would usually be last, but actually no, 21st and 22nd are actually last. And yes, but yeah, no movers and shakers in terms of position, but of course gaps have changed. So Verstappen to Norris, 62 points, 8 races to go. That's about 7.5 points per race on average. Lando needs to outscore Max by, which of course this was an opportunity squandered for sure for Lando Norris and McLaren from a drivers' championship point of view. But there will be the problem for Max is that it's not just that Lando has the car to beat Max. Seemingly now, every weekend till the rest of the season, till the end of the season, unless Red Bull bring upgrades, of course, or just fix their car. It's that Max was beaten today by both Ferraris, both McLarens, one Mercedes. Would have been 2 Mercedes if George hadn't have had such a difficult first lap, because he really got caught up in it, didn't he? I think more unlucky than anything for George, to be honest. But then he tangled with Max, didn't he? That was what actually caused the front wing end plate failing. But in terms of on pace, Red Bull were the 4th quickest car this weekend. I think that's fair to say. And with the 4th quickest car, even if Lando isn't winning every race, that gap will come down, and it will come down quickly. So time will tell on that one. Charles Leclerc, 217. So he is 24 points behind Lando Norris, which, again, if this Ferrari upgrade is cooked, look, stranger things have happened, okay? Stranger things have happened. We'll get into papaya rules, Ian. Don't you worry, all right? We'll get into papaya rules. Wow, honestly. It's the most PR... it's the most PR term for something which just should be like the racing rules. I don't know why I call it papaya rules. It just seems a bit weird to me. But anyway, Oscar Piastri 20 points behind Charles Leclerc. And then Carlos Sainz is 13 behind Oscar Piastri. Perez still holds on to P7, but you got to feel like, that P8 is his by the end of the year. George Russell has had some stinky weekends as of late, but his pace has been good. It's just whether it's through his own mistakes or just getting caught out, you know what I mean? But I feel like with 8 to go, it's not looking good for Checo. So that's how the driver standings look. As for the team standings, well, damn. It's 8 points between Red Bull and McLaren. It's over for Red Bull in the Constructors. And actually now, Red Bull Ferrari is 39 points. 39 points between Red Bull and Ferrari. That is absolutely surmountable, especially with this Ferrari upgrade. Red Bull P3 in the Constructors is absolutely on. And that's the problem, right? I'm not even talking about Checo here now, either, right? Because clearly something is going on. Something has happened to that car, which means that Max can no longer drive it competitively at the front consistently and is no longer happy with that car. So not only, as Checo hasn't been anyway, he hasn't been picking up the points anyway, but now Max all of a sudden can't either. Not to the extent that he was winning races back-to-back and at least getting podiums consistently now. With Ferrari potentially having made a step with this upgrade, McLaren, we know where they are. Mercedes, we kind of know where they are as well. Podiums are... It's quite realistic looking at what we've seen this weekend. If things continue this way, we might not see Max on the podium again all season. Look, if anyone can drag performance out of the car, it is Max Verstappen, of course. But ultimately, that package is not delivering what it was relative to the field. So, yes, P3 in the Constructors is absolutely... Because, of course, Ferrari had a great start to the season, didn't they? But now, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. Williams 2 points, 6 points now, 7 behind Alpine, with 8 races to go. The thing is, right, all Alex and, of course, ideally Franco, but you got to say Alex is going to be the more likely to score, is just keep putting his car best to the rest. If he can keep doing that. And again, Williams quick in Zandvoort, quick in Monza. All he can do is just keep doing that. All we can do is just keep... And hoping that the teams at the front, there's some squabbles and people DNF and crash into each other and whatever. As the season goes on, perhaps... You know, there's more tension between Lando and Max as the season goes on because it starts to get a bit tight. And then maybe Alex can capitalise. And maybe Williams could leapfrog Alpine. It would take some freak results, but could happen. Could absolutely happen. Otherwise, not too much. Mercedes Constructors is a mile off. But again, them finishing P4 in the Constructors means good ATR allocation for next season. And their car is already in a very good place. Their race pace wasn't quite on it in Monza, sure. But we're in a place now where it feels like these top 4 cars, you go between any weekend and depending on the characteristics, some are going to excel at some more than others. And that's exactly what we want from this sport. And thank you, Sava, for gifting 10 memberships. What a goat. Very kind of you. Love that. You get a little pin badge next to your name, Dan, and Mexi, and Assistant, and David. Lovely jubbly. Right, cool. So, that's the team standings. That's the driver standings. But what about predictions? Well, we, of course, make predictions. We do the pre-race. So make sure you subscribe to the Tommo YouTube channel. You can like this one as well to support what I do. Or, again, Apple Podcast, Spotify, listening, right? Because if you are subscribed, then you can see my community posts where I put the poll out pre-race. And we get some predictions. Now, starting with mine, not my finest weekend. Although, to be fair, by my standards, even just getting a couple right is pretty good. Look, for me, race winner Lando Norris, no. Banger drive Alex Albon, best of the rest. What did he do wrong? Great qualifying. I'm putting him up there. Sorry, I'm giving myself a point for that. The bias may be factoring in, but objectively, he did have a banger weekend. Okay. Clanger drive Esteban Ocon. No. I mean, Alpine weren't in a good place, but he finished ahead of Pierre. Pierre did have a problem. We don't actually know what the problem is. I've not seen. I had a little look. Couldn't really find any information around what Pierre's issue was in his first stint, but it was a bit of an issue regardless. So banger team Aston Martin. No, absolutely not. Clanger team Alpine. I gave myself half a point for that because they were just slow. They weren't operationally terrible. There were other teams, I think, who had clanginger weekends than Alpine. And they both got out of Q1. So I want to give him a little bit of credit. But not too much. Okay? Not too much. Alpine are my clanger. Not my maybe clanger team. Your predictions, much better, to be honest. Well done. Race winner Lando. No. Bang and drive Charles Leclerc. Well done. Fair play. All right. You went full Monza send. Okay. You went full Monza send. Hence the Ferrari banger team as well. Clanger drive Checo. He was 16 seconds behind Max. And almost all of that time was in the final stint because he wasn't actually that far from Max for a lot of the race. And then all of a sudden he was a mile behind. And also that was, I think, a very late and a bit of a naughty move on George Russell at the end of the straight. But I'll give you half a point for that. It wasn't the clangiest. No, it wasn't. And then Clanger Team Sauber, I mean, they're always down there. So well done. It's not even worth a point, you know. Not even worth a point. So, but either way, you beat me. Okay, these are just arbitrary points that no one actually cares about. You beat me. Well done. I hope you're happy. Okay, I hope you're happy. Okay, bangers and clangers then. Let's talk good drives, bad drives. Starting with the bangingest drive of them all, and to nobody's surprise, it's Charles Leclerc. The fact that this guy he's Charles so good. He's so good, and I really hope, I pray Ferrari give him the car because he is him. I've seen Charles develop into this. He's I feel like he's really complete now, and a drive that you put in today, no mistakes, just an absolute masseuse on the tyres. So good. So good. The fact that he qualified where he did as well, he's up there. He's so good. He's so good. And this is vintage Charles Leclerc. And if Ferrari give him the car next season, he's 100% up there in the title fight. And especially Lewis was very self-critical after qualifying yesterday. I do think, if I had to put money on it, I'm saying Charles batters Lewis in qualifying between the two of them next year. I really do. And in the races, I don't see Lewis. Lewis is exceptional in a race, but Charles is too. And I think Charles is gonna. That's my prediction for next year. I think Charles is gonna not absolutely muller Lewis. Don't get me wrong, but I think he will consistently be quicker and consistently outscore Lewis Hamilton next year. So that's my banger drive. But what about yours? Well, 1,653 of you voted, so thank you for voting. Again, make sure you subscribed to the channel so you see the poll. And your banger drive, unsurprisingly, is Charles Leclerc. 83% of the vote. Grazie ragazzi. 6% Oscar Piastri. I don't think he himself could have done too much more. McLaren were always going for a 2-stop. Yes, you could say, well, Oscar should have called for a 1-stop, but realistically, it was a outside of the box call from Ferrari, and I think Charles' ability to manage those tyres is what delivered the win, as well as Ferrari going for the kind of crazy call. But Piastri put a hell of a move on his teammate. What a move it was. It was perfect. Gave him room, made it stick. It was so good. So Oscar, fair play. 5% Colapinto, again, great drive on debut. Big credit to him for that. 14 seconds behind Alex Albon. It is a very, very good first F1 drive for him. And 2% Kevin Magnussen, who, actually, to be fair, Kevin, he had a fantastic race. Overtakes left, right and centre. Made up for Hulkenberg's misgivings, which it's usually the other way round. And was very unlucky to get a 10-second penalty, given Ricciardo only got a 5-second penalty for his absolutely horrific squeeze on Hulkenberg, lap 1. And then also get 2 penalty points. So I thought Magnussen was very unlucky there. So I think shout out Magnussen. I think he would have got more than 2% of the vote if he hadn't got that undeserved ban, I think, for Baku. I think that was harsh. Also, by the way, anyone doing a super chat, I will get to the super chats later on. I just want to kind of get through all this, and then we'll crack on with the super chats. But thank you so much for them. I do appreciate you for supporting what I do. Very kind. So, what about Clanger? Any thoughts, chat? Any names come to mind for Clanger Drive for the 2024 Italian Grand Prix? Hulkenberg from Avkid. Liam says Hulkenberg as well. Lando from 6-2. Joe from It's Twingo. Stroll from Bandits. General says Lando. Russell from Lucas. Ricardo from Mr. Challenge. Stroll. Lando. Stroll, Max. Damn. Vladislav, that's harsh. So there were many, many drivers that could have got Clanger Drive. For me, I'm giving it to Daniel Ricciardo. That lap 1 squeeze on Nico Hulkenberg was really bad. At a really sketchy point at the track as well. I'm giving Hulkenberg benefit of the doubt because he did harpoon Yuki Tsunoda. But I'm giving a bit of benefit of doubt purely because I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel squeezing Nico like he did and putting him on the grass, where he almost had a massive accident, may have caused some kind of damage that then result, because that's very out of character for Nico Hulkenberg to harpoon Tsunoda like he did. So I'm giving benefit of doubt there. That was a clanger That was a clanger squeeze from Ricciardo. And there's like, it's not even something under the brakes. He literally just, those kind of moves, they get big. Because like you locking a brake at the end of the Monza straight is it's such a difficult braking zone to get right. I have way more sympathy for anyone who has a bit of a clang there versus just squeezing another driver off the track and almost putting him to the wall at 300 kilometers an hour. So I'm giving it Ricciardo. Sorry. And yeah, look, you might have recovered well. The problem is as well, Ryan, right? Because then that 5 second, then the butterfly effect of that, it's almost like it could have been so good for Ricciardo. But the butterfly effect of that was that then he had to come in, serve a 5 second penalty for that incident. And then, racing balls, just touch the car and you're like, no. They were like, no, they do. And then that led to another 10. So it ended up 15 seconds of penalties. And it all started with that little, I know it wasn't Daniel who touched the car and it's not his fault, but the butterfly effect of him putting a very rookie squeeze on, nah, sorry, not good enough. And yes, Joe was slow. Stroll was about, before he pitted for softs, I had a look, he was about 26 seconds behind Fernando Alonso before he put the softs on. I did seriously consider giving this to Stroll because of that. And also, I don't know if you've seen, Oscar Piastri, in 2 separate interviews, said that Stroll was driving like he was in his first year of karting. Because basically Stroll wasn't heeding to the blue flags. I've not seen any replays. I've just heard Oscar roast him, basically. But yeah, I was very tempted to give this to Stroll. But Stroll didn't drive anyone off the track. So I'm giving it Daniel. Okay. Might not be the popular choice, but it's mine. And your clanger drive, 29% of the vote, Lando Norris. Ouch. 24% of the vote, Nico Hulkenberg. 11% George Russell. 8% Kevin Magnussen. Getting very harsh for Kevin. Wasn't his fault. That was tough. 29%. Look. Okay, so Lando got away well. Oscar did get him, and it was a good move. The problem, Lando would have been fine if he hadn't have lost the rear end, wasn't it? Because Oscar got alongside, gave Lando racing room. Oscar, it was textbook. And there's an argument, there's a separate conversation as to whether he should have been doing that move on his teammate in the first place, and we'll get into that. But just looking at move in isolation, Lando was given room by Oscar, and unfortunately, Lando did kind of lose the rear end, didn't he? And it was that loss of momentum, which it happened. It didn't have to. It wasn't like Oscar forced Lando into losing his rear end. Lando lost the rear end of the car, and where he could have just slotted in behind Oscar, and then there would have still been a 1-2. He lost it, and then Charles got the momentum and took it past Lando. So that was an L from Lando for sure. Then of course he made a mistake, didn't he, Lando as well? He lost about almost 2 seconds to Oscar when he at that second chicane when he kind of went straight on. So his race wasn't completely clean. Obviously, he made his moves through the field, as did Oscar. But, I mean, putting him as clanger is of course, incredibly harsh. But it wasn't a great race from him. It wasn't a great execution for him. But it certainly wasn't the worst drive. Jesus. 24% Hulkenberg. Yeah, look, he literally harpooned. He literally ended Yuki Tsunoda's race. So I get it for sure. 11% Russell. George. I think he was unlucky. I get why it happened because, of course, Oscar coming across him and then you lose that bit of downforce, which obviously George has to know that. He of course he knows he's going to lose downforce there, but he just misjudges it. Brakes ever so slightly too late. I've not seen the Russell Verstappen on board of their contact. I I've not seen that, so I've not seen how George actually lost his front wing end plate, because I believe it was through contact with Max. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, George Ricciardo. I mean, George had to replace. Sorry, George had to replace his front wing, and was driving with missing a front wing end plate for a bit as well, and then still finished ahead of Perez. Yeah, George is considered to have a worse drive than Checo. I mean, I know the Red Bull wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. Come on. And 8%, yeah, again, Kevin Magnussen, I think that's crazy, because actually I think he had a really good race. But anyway, right, banger team. I mean, let's just run through this. It's obviously Ferrari. 85% of the vote for you. I took them as well, Ferrari. 9% Williams. Again, upgrades, cooking. Well done, Alex. Well done, Franco, as well. Williams have got to be given credit for... You've got a driver coming in. They're the ones who have had to, get him into this position and enable him to achieve the success of P12 that he did today. So, fair play to Williams on that one. 6% McLaren. Banger team. I mean, it's a double podium, which, a double podium would typically be a banger for a team. But unfortunately, there's more to it than that, isn't there? So, yeah. And then clanger team for me, Red Bull. Cars relative. Of course, this is all relative. Of course, where we expect Red Bull to be, they were absolutely nowhere on pace. Terrible pit stop for Max. He wasn't happy with the strategy either. Yeah, really, really not good for Red Bull. And damn, it's just like all of a sudden, it's actually crazy. So, yeah, I'm giving it Red Bull. Obviously, Sauber was slower than Red Bull. Again, this is relative to what they should be delivering. And it's just like out of nowhere, Bosch, they're trash. And they've got to find a way to turn this around. Otherwise, Max's Drivers' Championship could be in trouble. Although McLaren are doing their best to try and make him make it so that it's not. So, yeah, for me, Clanger Team Red Bull. And for you, Clanger Team Red Bull as well. 34% of the votes. 31% McLaren. I get it. 14% Racing Bulls. Again, that mechanic touching the car is basically the main thing. Obviously, Tsunoda got harpooned as well, but that wasn't the team's fault. It was Nico Hülkenberg's fault, which may have been Ricciardo's. So maybe the butterfly effect of Ricciardo squeezing Hülkenberg meant that Hülkenberg harpooned Tsunoda. So even more reason to put Ricciardo as clanger. Look, the butterfly effect, you can't prove that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't squeezed Hülkenberg off. But yeah, I did really feel for that mechanic. I really did. 10% of the vote to Sauber, as per usual. Okay, excellent. Well, they're your bangers, okay? And clangers, there's mine. We're pretty close. But you've gone Lando over Ricciardo. Ricciardo definitely had a worse race than Lando, though. Come on. Let's be real. I think I am the winner there. Right, team by team. Let's talk about each team in isolation. Alpine. The main thing to talk about here is that they were slow. We all knew they were going to be slow. Gasly doesn't think Magnussen deserves a race ban. And that's about it. Not much to say on Alpine, but, I mean, considering they're down on power by whatever it is, 20, 30 horsepower, then, both out of Q1. It's okay. Very little to say about Alpine this weekend. Sorry, I've not got a lot to give on these lot. And because there wasn't much of interest or intrigue to talk about. Gasly again seemed to have a bit of an issue at the back. Changed his tyres. His pit stops seemed to help. But, oh yeah, there was the protest, Rayner. Actually, yeah, that was the kind of one thing of note regarding Alpine this weekend was the protest from staff from Viry-Châtillon who are protesting against the move away from developing Formula One engines at that facility that they have been for so many years now. And we'll see. I mean, the way Bruno Famin was talking about, he was talking about it like it's done, but of course, French employment laws are a thing. It's not necessarily people losing their jobs. I guess we don't know, right? it's people being moved on to different projects within Alpine. That's how Alpine have kind of communicated it. That's how Bruno Fama's talked about it, moving those staff over to other Alpine projects, be that the WEC projects that they have going. They've got some more Alpine road cars coming out finally, including the Renault 5 looking thing. So yeah, we'll see how that goes for them. But fingers crossed that everyone at Viry-Châtillon keeps their job, because that's the most important thing. Oh yes, Helita, good shout. Nico Rosberg talking about Alpine email in his mailbox. Apparently, well, I was listening to it when he was talking about it. Nico Rosberg was like, oh yeah, I got an email. They're valuing the team at just under $1 billion. That's what he said. And it was obviously an email of some kind of intrigue of getting him involved in the team. Like, you've got so many people involved in Alpine already. And yeah, that's Nico Rosberg is a fantastic. I will not hear any, like, he's so good. I think he's a quality pundit. He's exactly what the sport needs, because he can get away with asking these on the nose questions to everyone and anyone, because he's a world champion, and a relatively recent world champion as well. I mean, what? Verstappen, Hamilton, Rosberg, the third most recent driver to win a world championship is Nico Rosberg. I'm not forgetting anyone, am I? No, I'm not. So yeah, that'd be chaos. But yeah, Nico was on something good this weekend. Love to see it. Right, Aston Martin. Just like Alpine, that's got very, very little to say. Very little of any, just middle of the road. You know, Stroll went out in Q1. Fernando got to Q2, was close to Q3, and they need something. They need an upgrade. Whether they're just gonna muddle along until the end of this season and then bring something big for 2025. Whatever's going on, they need to sort it out, right? Enrico Cardile, of course, is coming in imminently, I believe, to Aston Martin. I'm not sure exactly when he's joining. They need that wind tunnel online, Squibbles, exactly. They need to get all these extra facilities online. They need to hit 2025 good, because there is a 4-team fight at the front and they're not part of it. You look at the start of last year and you think, oh, absolutely, they'll be part of a 2025 title fight. But it's not the case. So, do you reckon they might be risk of losing Alonso post next year? I mean, look, who knows, right? Fernando Alonso is not a driver to suffer fools gladly, and if he thinks this is not going to be not going to work for him long term, then I think he'll be off. But who knows what's stipulated in his contract? Yeah, it's tough. Must be tough for the team at Aston Martin to kind of have this momentum at the start of 2023 and think, oh my, we've actually turned a corner. Like, we're one of the best teams in F1. And then nothing. And then regress. And they're finishing behind a Williams and a Haas. I mean, the Haas was the 5th quickest car this weekend. I think absolutely. If Hülkenberg hadn't have had his problems, think where he could have finished relative to Checo. Magnussen was only like 5 seconds behind Checo at the end. Think where if Hülkenberg had kept it clean at the start and not got squeezed off by Ricciardo and then not harpooned Yuki Tsunoda and had a clean start, think where he would have been right up there close with the with the Red Bulls. So yeah, it's not looking good. And look at all the money. Like Aston Martin and Haas are so close on track, yet couldn't be more different, could they? In terms of like the money and the glitz and the glamour, and Gene's just chucking this team a couple of pound every week, just be like, yep, that'll keep the lights on. And Haas are quicker at the moment. It's just goes to show, doesn't it? It's human beings at the end of the day. It's human beings at the end of the day who build and design and create these cars, and a team like Haas that have been, you know, all over the place for so many years recently have found something and it's working for them. And Aston are throwing money at the project, but it's just not clicking, is it? It's just not clicking. Aston Martin. Right. Ferrari. Grazie ragazzi. Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again. Said it exactly when George won in Spa. You know, he was in a position where he could afford to take that risk, and it paid off. Charles Leclerc was P3. He was running a podium position, so it wasn't like they had absolutely nothing to lose, but they saw an opportunity, they went for it, and Charles made it work, and Charles pulled it off. To be fair, even Sainz, that gap between Leclerc and Sainz towards the end stayed pretty steady at around 10 seconds. I was kind of looking between, but the thing is, like, Sainz had a good 5-lap newer tyres on his car than Charles. So Charles just did... there's not many drivers who would have been able to pull off what Charles did today, I don't think. Great job. And look, could other teams have done it? Maybe, maybe not. Every team, wears its tyres differently. If you get all 10 teams to push the exact same amount with the exact same driver, let's just imagine you normalize every single variable. Some cars are going to grain and degrade and get through their tyres at different rates. They're all going to do it at different rates because they're all different cars. So could the McLarens, could the Mercedes, could the Red Bulls have done a one-stop if they really optimised for it and tried it? Maybe. We don't know. Maybe the Ferrari was the only car that could have made the one-stop work. Maybe it wasn't. And it seemed like at no point did McLaren have any intention to go to anything other than a two-stop. But Ferrari, it's one of them calls, isn't it? That if you get it wrong, you look like clowns. And if you get it right, you look like heroes. And they look like heroes today. Charles Leclerc at the wheel. So, yeah, fantastic job from him. I'd love to get carried away that this upgrade is going to fix a lot of their problems as of late, because they did regress into feeling like, they're only going to be the 4th quickest car. They've got as many wins as McLaren this season. 2 for Charles, 1 for Carlos. So, all in all, they've actually done well to kind of get through this period and still be pretty consistent. Again, Charles was top 4 for the first 8 Grand Prix of the season, which is easy to forget. So, hopefully they're back. Fingers crossed they're back, because seeing Ferrari at the front, alongside 3 other teams fighting for wins, simply lovely. Simply lovely. Haas, already touched on Haas. I think incredible weekend. Should have been double points, really, for Haas. If Hülkenberg doesn't have his misdemeanors, then I think double points for Haas absolutely would have been on pace-wise. I think Alex would have missed out if both those cars had clean weekends, it's incredible. Is it a coincidence that the Ferrari ran well and the Haas ran well, and the Haas is as close to the Ferrari as any car is to any other car on the grid? Maybe. But either way, Haas did a great job. Ao Komatsu is doing a fantastic job. The revival's been amazing. Mexia, couldn't agree more. Yeah, look, I think Gene certainly can and should, bear a good chunk of the responsibility as to why that team hasn't performed as well as it should have. But getting Gunter out and getting Komatsu in, I think was clearly the right choice. It's clearly the right choice. Don't know how else you can look at it, right? Correlation doesn't always equal causation, but it seems pretty clear to me. So, yes. Well done, Haas. Great job. And great job, Kevin Magnussen. Again, that penalty, the penalties track, that's not worthy of 2 super license points. Pierre didn't agree it was either. He said he will happily go to bat for Kevin to try and get that overturned, as he should, and fair play to Pierre, because it was not bad enough to accrue 2 penalty points and then get 12, which then means a race ban for Baku. But huge opportunity for Ollie Behrman at a track he loves. Very, very good around Azerbaijan. That is where he got his, last season, he got his sprint and feature race win and pole position. He got his full lockout. So, yeah, it's a happy hunting ground for Oliver Behrman. And well done, Haas. Well done, Haas. We're going to save the Papayans till last, actually, because that's the most interesting thing, I think, to talk about. And I want to keep the watch time up, all right? I want to keep you here, not going and doing other things and going and speaking to your families or going outside and touching grass. No, you stay here and you listen to me, all right? Mercedes didn't have the pace. Lewis was... I've never seen Lewis be so self-critical after a race. After a qualifying session, sorry. Yesterday. Damn. He was going in on himself. He sounded like some of those Lewis Hamilton hate pages you see on Twitter. Like, he was basically like, I'm washed. Like, Kimi will probably do a better job. Like, damn. It's like, I'm just bad. I'm like, Lewis, bro, no, come on. No. You're not bad, okay? You are statistically the greatest of all time, okay? You're not bad, okay? I think the standard of qualifiers and the fact that it's so close means that yeah, he could have got pole. And it's tiny margins. It's tiny margins. And, you know, damn. Bless him. I think it would have meant a lot to him to get pole at Monza, going to Ferrari next year. I think that would have been huge for him. So for him to not even be in the top 3 in qualifying when he felt like he had the car to do it, I can get why that would hurt, because he's like, damn, like, I want to make a really... I think it's important to Lewis, like, to make a good impression to the Ferrari fans and that. So the fact that he wasn't able to hook up a lap and put it at least top 3 in qualifying, I get why that would have hurt. And I think after, you know, post-race, he was much more kind of magnanimous, like, oh, yeah, we just didn't really have the pace, and, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, he was so tough on himself. It was almost like Lando-esque levels of like, oh God, I'm just not very good. Which, look, accountability is a very human, and I think it's actually more often than not, it's a very positive emotion to have, to be accountable to yourself. But yeah, it was just quite, not jarring. It was quite unusual hearing Lewis be that self-critical. Like, he is a driver who will hold his hands up, but I think he was like exceptionally self-critical after that qualifying session. But regardless, Mercedes, yeah, just didn't quite have the pace. Again, I think Russell was, you know, he was a bit unlucky, a bit of a misjudgment from him, and big consequences on the first lap, which then he had a bit of contact, and then that lost the front wing end plate, and then his race was still gone from there, wasn't it? So it's yeah, just weekend to forget really for Mercedes, but probably in Baku they'll be fine. Now, in Singapore, Mercedes will cook in Singapore. I reckon that track is going to be absolutely ideal for them. Maybe not Baku, because it's not straight lines, but I reckon Singapore. And that's where we are with F1 right now. It's going to be each weekend, it's like who wins, and it's so good. Like, right, seriously, yeah? All of these times when people were complaining about Max domination, and I know a lot of Max fans out there, and I get it, right? Because you're winning, you're seeing your guy win, or your team, whatever sport it is, right? And you think, oh, the world hates us because we're always winning, blah, blah, blah. You know, there are people who hate Max, right? For no real reason, and they just, you know, love to hate, right? I get that. Those people exist. But, come on. Even the biggest Max fan must look at this and be like, all right, yeah, our guy's struggling at the minute, but it's bloody exciting. Like, every weekend, who knows what's going to win? This is what we all want F1 to be. Like, it's so good. It's so good at the minute. And 2025, we will be here, no matter what, okay? No matter what. No matter what. That's the wrong page. There we go, to Mercedes F1 team. Not much more to say on Mercedes. We'll see how they do next weekend. Racing Bulls, again, I pray for that poor pit crew person who touched Daniel's car when he was serving his 5-second penalty, because that was tough to watch. Otherwise, not much to say. Yuki out in Q1. Daniel was very close to getting out in Q1, but made it through to Q2, and I think he qualified like P15, so they bought so many upgrades this year. V carbohydrate, that who knows. So, listening to Ted's notebook post-race, he had an interesting little anecdote regarding Racing Bulls, actually. Was it P12? Oh, fair play. I thought it was P15 in qualifying. I'm mistaken. But, I mean, that's what Daniel needs, right? That's what... It's kind of... If Daniel hadn't squeezed Hulkenberg off, he's probably delivering points. With Yuki finishing nowhere, that would have been a huge, like, over Yuki, because Yuki went out in Q1 as well. And then he couldn't make it count because he squeezed. when he did that to Hulkenberg, I was so like, maybe that's why I put him claimer as well, because I was extra like disappointed, because I'm like, bro, you've got an open door for a Red Bull seat here and you're not taking it. But either way, Ted was saying that Liam Lawson, he thinks Liam Lawson is going to be announced before Baku. Because when is Liam Lawson's contract thing coming up? Hang on, let me... I'm sure it's like, it is some point in September, which it is now September. Pinch punch, first day of the month, by the way. Got you. Too slow. I'm sure it was September. Yeah, I feel I can't. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly when, but it was. I'm sure there was a date in September that Lawson needs to be announced. So, but yeah, Ted Kravitz seems to believe that it will be at a Racing Bull seat for next year for Liam Lawson, which means it is a straight shootout for Perez and Ricciardo for the Red Bull seat. So we will see how that goes. Otherwise, very little to say. Is it the 15th, Jerome? Yeah, Jerome, that seems right. The 15th does seem right. I feel like that rings a bell, that number. But yeah, not good for the bulls that race, and not good for the bulls that are red either. Right, chat. I don't get it, okay? So when we had this change in the ruling about the asymmetrical braking, the FIA said that no team had this system, blah, 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 and then Peter Windsor talked about saying it was Red Bull, and then they were like, no, it's not, and blah, blah, blah. And I did a little video about it, didn't we? Kind of discussed it. I mean, this downtick in performance certainly does not help the conspiracy theories, because, damn, it has been sudden and it has been sharp. What's going on? Chat, do we have any thoughts? Newey? No, Arjen, this doesn't change. Like Newey's not been an active daily member in that Red Bull car development for a long time now. He kind of steers the ship from above, but he's generally working on the RB17 and all these other kind of projects. I don't believe that this is to do with Adrian leaving. Maybe Adrian, if he was still at the team, would be able to lend more advice and insight. But I'm sure I remember reading quotes earlier in the year being like, Adrian wanted to change up the car because maybe it's hit a bit of a performance ceiling, and then they didn't want to because there was this whole like conversation as well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But maybe it was broke and they just hadn't found the breakage yet, right? So I don't think it's Newey. The cost cap, maybe. And obviously the ATR punishment, just everyone else moving forward, then bringing an upgrade that just didn't seem to really work. It's so weird, isn't it? It's very strange. It's very strange how other teams catching up, maybe too focused on sorting the curb issue. Maybe have they hit a peak in this, and then they're trying to find performance, and then that's just making the car so difficult to drive. It's not turning in, blah blah blah. The thing is, we can only speculate because we don't know, right? I reckon most of us are not engineers at a Formula One level of capacity. Okay, I'm assuming. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's balance issue. The word balance, I've heard balance so many times. Oh my god, the word balance, Jesus Christ. It's just like, it's such the hot topic word of these regulations. Not just from Red Bull, to be fair, from every team. But yeah, man, it's Red Bull third in the constructors and Max losing the drivers' championship. As things are going, even with McLaren doing their best to squander opportunities, is absolutely on. It actually is, isn't it? Have you heard about the issue being about balance? No way, Eamon. No way. No way. Look, we'll see. Time will tell. Baku is typically a track they do okay at. Singapore is typically a track they absolutely honk at. So, who knows? Who knows? Sauber, you can always rely on Sauber honking more than the rest. Bottas went long. Joe was a mile back at the start, but then he was ahead of Bottas, but then he had to pit, and I was going to do a video about, because Joe has been absolutely nowhere, and that's like, he's not always been absolutely nowhere. And I was like, there were 2 notebooks in a row where Ted was like, "Oh, Joe's just got these like Frankenstein upgrades on his car," and they're basically using. It feels like from the understanding that I've gleaned from Ted talking and various other things I've seen, is that Bottas is kind of, they're keeping Bottas's car more stable, and then they're using Joe's car as like the experimental car. Now, does that explain the Golf? Perhaps. To what extent that explains it, who knows? And look, Prithvi, I think Joe needs to stay as reserve so that Audi can get the bag of having a Chinese driver in their pool, right? Because China is the biggest market for Audi, and F1 is all about marketing. So if they let Joe go completely, they are missing a trick from a commercial point of view. But yeah, there's no way. There's absolutely no way he's in that car next season. And, well, there's a driver. Actually, you know what? There is a driver who is not Valtteri Bottas that I hope is in that car next season. And you will see in this week's video who that driver is. So I'll leave you with that. I wish Jordan was still in F1. Oh, what a team. What a team. What a team. Right, and finally, Williams Racing. Well done, Williams. Again, very, very good. Colapinto, P12, great job. Smashed it. Not literally, which was the problem for Logan, that he literally smashed it too often and didn't have the pace to back it up. And Albon, great drive. Couldn't ask for much more, really. I think he delivered everything he could have. So, yeah, chat, you know, chat knows. Not really got too much more to say about Williams. Just great job all round. So let's now end with the team of the moment, McLaren. Oh, McLaren, you just can't do it easily, can you? You can't just make it easy. You can't just deliver the 1-2 and just everyone goes home. Oh, just well done, McLaren. Yeah, bit of a boring race, really. Just won by a mile. No, they have to make it Papayan, bright orange, interesting, bold, bit out there. Okay. Right, we're going to have to get some polls going. Chat. Okay. We're going to have to get some polls going. Again, reminder, anyone who's super chatted, I will get to your super chats right at the end of this stream. And I do appreciate them. Thank you so much. You are far too good to me. Right, okay. Poll number 1. Actually, I'm not ready for a poll yet. We need to talk a little bit first before the poll. Okay, so. Lando, great job in qualifying. Out-qualified. Oscar put 2 laps in that were both quicker than Oscar and both good enough for pole. So credit where credit is due to Lando. Absolutely delivered on the Saturday. So well done him. In the race, held P1 as well. And Oscar kind of was there, but didn't go crazy risk into that chicane. And got in front of George. Then George had his issue, which, you know, Ted was saying in his notebook that George was unhappy with Piastri, but I didn't get that sense from George's post-race interview at all, actually. So I think Piastri was fine, cut across George, and that was okay, and it happens. George went wide, whatever. Go through the chicane, and Lando doesn't get the traction down coming out. Oscar does a better job, even though Oscar's line was pretty compromised compared to Lando's because he was on the outside. Oscar has a more compromised line, yet gets the traction down better than Lando. Maybe had a bit more tyre temperature as well. Obviously, that we were waiting for a long time on the grid, weren't we? And papaya rules, honestly. Papaya rules, what are you doing? And so then Lando pulls away, Oscar pulls away, and they're going along the long right-hander, right, coming up to the next chicane, and Oscar's clearly got a run on Lando. The Ferraris are miles back as well, right? They are like on their own, okay? Relatively speaking, of course. They're on their own. And then Oscar goes to the outside. Lando seems to brake quite early. You can see him braking quite significantly earlier than Oscar Piastri. Oscar gives Lando space around the outside, which gives him the inside for the next corner. Lando on the inside loses the rear end, which then massively stifles his momentum, and then loses position to not just Oscar, but then Charles Leclerc, absolute opportunistic lad that he is, comes along, shoots it up the inside, gets his nose there, so Lando can't squeeze him off, and takes P2. And then it's a 1-3 McLaren when they started as a 1-2 with Oscar Piastri going from P3 to P1. Now, I don't think anyone, like, if you take all of the liveries off these cars and no one's in a team and blah, 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 that is an incredible move by Oscar Piastri. Absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And you know what? Both cars had an alright start. Maybe Jordan had a slightly better start than McLaren's, but they were both decent off the start. Lando held position. And Oscar put a worldie of a move on Lando Norris. Now, look, cast back to Monaco, Ocon Gasly, okay? And Ocon got a lot of heat for putting a move on Gasly, which you have no right to make that move on the first lap on your teammate at Monaco. Is not an opportunity to pass, because it's everyone's in single file, and Ocon sent it up the inside and put Gasly in a position where it was only going to be contact, okay, and was rightly called out and was rightly, because that was a ridiculous move that Ocon tried to pull on Gasly there. In this instance, Lando's your teammate, okay, understand that, he understands that. And McLaren understand that, importantly, right? So McLaren, very much, they want to, and Zach keeps saying we've got two number one drivers. You can't have two number one drivers, Zach. But anyway, right? So they're like, you can race hard, you can race fair, just no contact. And Oscar held up his end of the bargain, and Lando didn't crash into it. It was Lando's fault that he lost a bit of momentum. But this is by no way. I've seen, the reason I brought up the Alpine thing is because I've seen people try and be, it wasn't, when Ocon did it on Gasly, everyone was calling it out. But if Piastri puts an aggressive move on Lando, then it's so, no. Firstly, no. They're not. Very different, okay? Because it was a fair, it was a clean move that Lando was very, very aware that Oscar was making along the outside. Now, the question is, should that have been allowed to happen, and should that have been facilitated? Because really, if Lando doesn't light up the rears and he just slots him back behind Oscar, they're still 1-2. Yeah, they're in a different order, but they're still 1-2 McLaren. And they can still, they can still lead this race from the front in that clean air, which Oscar had, ahead of Charles. And they can dictate a bit more, and they can control the strategy a bit more, and they probably win this race if it's a 1-2. Now, of course, if Oscar doesn't try and make the move, Lando stays ahead, and it's still a 1-2. But then you come back to what McLaren want to be. And Zach's talked about this, and Andreas talked about this, and they have this very idealistic vision of what McLaren should be. This fair, equitable organisation, okay, where there's no number one driver. They can fight, but they've got, Is that the way you win championships? Is that idealistic dream of two number ones who, both win races, will win the Constructors, will win the Drivers' Championship, they'll get along, and there'll be occasional little, but we'll keep it clean and it'll be good. Is that going to win you championships? Is that going to win you championships when you're Mercedes in 2014, in 2015, in 2016? Yes. Because there's no one else close. You've got Ricciardo in his Red Bull, occasionally doing bits. Vettel in his Ferrari, occasionally doing bits. But back then, that's fine. But in 2024, going into 2025, this mindset from Zak Brown and McLaren will compromise their ability to win championships in this current form of Formula One, where you've got a cost cap, where, because for a long time Max and Red Bull were dominating, and all of a sudden now the field's tightened up. If you're going to win the driver's title, which is important to the teams, of course it is, because it's the only one that the fans actually really care about, like realistically, okay? Yeah, the teams, it's important to them internally, good prize money, blah, blah, blah. No one remembers that Ferrari won the Constructors in 2008. Everyone remembers that Lewis Hamilton won the title in 2008, okay? All the records, it's drivers' championships is what people remember, what people think of. McLaren, it's naive. It's so naive to think that this system is going to work in this day and age and is going to deliver you drivers and constructors championships. Perhaps constructors, but even then, if you open yourself up to so much more variability, you're not going to, because Red Bull or Ferrari or Mercedes will capitalise, and Charles Leclerc and Ferrari capitalise today. If it's McLaren 1-2 at the end of that first lap, in whatever order, I don't think Charles Leclerc's winning that race. I don't. So that's my opinion. So now I'm going to do the poll like I said I was going to do earlier. Sorry, I forgot to do the poll. So will McLaren's we have two number one drivers approach leads to success or failure? I'm trying to word it in such a way. So success, failure, or neutral. Do you think taking this we have two number one drivers approach will be more successful than doing a hard number one, number two driver, less successful, or about the same over the course of a tenure? in this day and age, in what F1 is now, because it doesn't matter what has come in the past, okay? This sport, it changes, and the competitive order changes, and the types of car change, and we've got ground effect now, blah, blah, blah. But in this generation, is that going to hurt McLaren more than it helps McLaren? Because, again, it's a very idealistic way of looking at things, that you can trust your drivers to be mature and to go racing hard but fair, and you can win drivers' titles and you can win constructors' titles. But is that actually going to deliver? Because you can argue in many ways, right? If you've got two drivers that are going to fight each other as teammates at every opportunity, statistically, they will hit each other, and therefore they will also cost the team constructors points. Versus whenever this driver is behind, or like you let them past, you're not going to hit each other. You can follow each other around and blah, blah, blah. And that, the thing is, right, you look at the old, there was a, of course, because I'm helping Mark Prix with his podcast. There's a really good clip, Pit Lane Life Lessons. Go check it out on YouTube. And Mark was talking about McLaren's mistake in 2007, because when Lewis came into that team, came into McLaren alongside Fernando Alonso, it was never talked about. A number one, number two is never talked about, because it was assumed, understandably so, that Fernando would be the number one driver. And Fernando assumed this because, well, he's a two-time world champion and he's got a rookie coming in next to him. And Fernando's going to lead this team and Bosch should be fine. And Lewis will come in and just be the number two and pick up points and help out when he can. But when Lewis was up to pace, they still didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it. Mark says that. They didn't even talk about it internally within the team. There was no clear messaging. There was no clear right, these are the rules of combat as such. And there was no you're number one, you're number two. They were just we'll just let the drivers go racing. And what happened? Kimi Räikkönen won the title in 2007 because they were scrapping with each other and they took points off of each other and Kimi picked up the pieces. So, look, the poll results, only 9% of you think having this two number one drivers approach will lead to more success than it will failure. 60% of you think it will lead to more failure than success, and 32% think it will be about neutral. So it's a 60-40 split, basically. 60% of you think it will lead to more failure than success. And I agree. Now, look, obviously, you do also have to look at this from like what the other competitors are going to do. Because do I think Lewis Hamilton is going to come into a Ferrari team and expect to be number 2? Do I think Ferrari are opening themselves up to a clear 2 number 1 drivers dynamic, just like McLaren have? Yes, I do actually. So I do also think that Ferrari are going to find themselves in this conundrum somewhat. I think with Mercedes, obviously Kimi Antonelli alongside George Russell, you would assume that George is going to be the number 1. But everything Toto is saying about Kimi Antonelli is like insanely impressive. So who knows on that front. But you would think that given George was kind of, not that he always wanted to win against Lewis, so maybe that's naive, but I reckon Kimi will fall into line, at least in his first year, and just play the team game more than he will worry too much about his own performance. And then Red Bull. I mean, Red Bull have a clear 1-2 right now. Will they have a clear 1-2 next year? If Max is at the team, absolutely. It doesn't matter who you bring in. If it's Ricciardo or Perez, they're going to be the number 2 driver. So that is almost the strength of Red Bull. But then when your number 2 driver is struggling so much, that's when it becomes a problem. There is, of course, a balance to this. You want a number 2, but not too much of a number 2. And that's why I do think that what Ferrari had, Sainz and Leclerc is better than Sainz by enough, but not by too much. Leclerc's fantastic. I put him up there. In terms of ability, I put him up there with Hamilton, with Verstappen, with the best drivers. Absolutely. But Sainz can still win races. He can still deliver podiums. He's still incredibly talented. He's not quite at that level, but he's close enough. He's within a couple of tenths. A tenth. Between a tenth and 2 tenths. And that's perfect. And Ferrari had that. And they're letting that go. And I get it. Lewis's star power is hard to be ignored. But I think Ferrari were the one team that... I would feel more confident about Ferrari title push in 25 if Sainz had stayed than I do with Lewis coming in, because I think that you can't have 2 number 1s. And I think we're seeing it here with McLaren. So, look, what I do think was a bit weird and a bit silly is that they didn't swap Lando and Oscar at the end, because that's 3 points for Lando Norris that he could have had. And it's one thing to ask Oscar to give away his first ever win in Formula 1. When, he would be losing it because of a team covering decision. So not even really on merit. It's another thing to ask Oscar Piastri to give away a race win at Monza, right? But he wasn't winning. Charles was winning. So I think it's a pretty easy conversation to have with Oscar, in my opinion. Look, Lando's got a chance at the Drivers' Championship here. Chase Charles down. If you can get him, sweet. If you can scrap with him and you lose out, fine. You get P2. But if you're not going to catch him, you're giving up P2 for... Oscar doesn't give a toss about P2 or P3, right? He wants to win. He's not... I think absolutely McLaren should have built up a situation where if it comes to the end, if it's not for a race win, I mean, you still get a podium. I just think McLaren have gone about this so strangely. And you would think that they could... They've obviously discussed these things beforehand. They must have discussed these things beforehand. I don't think Oscar is going to put up a massive fight about holding on to P2 over P3 when Lando gets 3 more points in the Drivers' Championship and 3 points that could make a difference by the end. That decision to me, I don't know what McLaren are trying to do, because it's like, if you're going to have this idealistic view that you can make 2 number ones work, you need to be absolutely military precise on your communication and your expectation from these drivers. And then I don't think they've got the capacity to deliver. Like I think you need to be so on top of your drivers' etiquette, I guess, relative to one another, to make 2 number ones work, because no one's ever done it before. When has 2 number ones ever worked? Apart from when the team's been clear in the championship, like McLaren were back in the day when they were miles clear with Senna and Prost and they could crash into each other and still win stuff. When Mercedes had Rosberg and Hamilton and they could crash into each other and they could still win stuff. That's not the case. That's not the case, so you can't. You can't. If you need to be absolutely on it, and there needs to be no, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's silly. And yes, McLaren haven't been here before winning, but come on, they're not a bunch of amateurs. Like, they're a Formula 1 team who've built probably the best car in Formula 1 right now. Like, I don't know, right? I don't know. I think you get to a point in the season, right? And let's say post Hungary, where I think McLaren, in the broad scheme of things, I think it makes a lot of sense why they reversed the positions, because Lando was only ahead of Oscar because they were trying to cover off and do the best thing for the team. And this has been Oscar's first ever win in Formula 1. And as much as it shouldn't have been this big dialogue on the radio, because it should have just been clear and efficient, you know, Lando will need Oscar at points and in opportunities, right, throughout the season. However, there is an agreed, right, you can go racing. So I've seen some Lando fans being like, oh, well, Oscar's being selfish, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but these are agreed rules of engagement between both drivers. So if that's the agreed rules of engagement, that's the agreed rules of engagement. But like, if after that race, if after Hungary, you'd have been right, okay, sick, Oscar, you got your win. Look, we've potentially got a drivers' championship here. Unfortunately, Oscar, like, it stunk at the start of the season for him. He had some bad luck and he's out there. We need to, our priority as a team is the Constructors' Championship, but we'd appreciate it if at any opportunity where you and Lando are in convoy and, you know, not for a win. I think asking Oscar to give away wins for Lando is going to be very difficult for Oscar to accept. But I think, mate, bro, Oscar, if you're P2 and Lando's P3, like, try and win the race. But if you can't, just swap positions. Like, it's 3 points more for Lando. It doesn't change our constructors' position. The only Drivers' Championship position that actually matters is P1, whereas every single constructors' position matters. Bro, look, realistically, Lando is in more of a Drivers' Championship fight, and that's the team game, because the Drivers' Championship does matter to us. These teams say, oh, Drivers' Championship doesn't matter to us. Bollocks! Of course it does. And I think that's a very fair thing to ask of Oscar. I do. I think it's a very fair thing to ask of Oscar. I don't think that would really hurt for Oscar. I don't agree with him. Why would that really, like, what, for P2 over P3? Okay, maybe if it's a podium, right, if Oscar's P3 and Lando's P4, to ask Oscar to give away the podium for Lando. Okay, that's an ask. That is an ask, right? That's a medal that Oscar gets to keep and take home with him. I just don't think that that as a broad statement is too much to ask Oscar to do. I don't think it is, given the fact that he's so far behind in the constructors in the drivers' championship because of his early season bad luck and whatever. So yeah, I just, that's the way I see it. If you're asking Oscar to give away silverware, that's something else. But that is the way I see it, and I think McLaren are, unfortunately, the masters of their own downfall. But look, Mingquan says Lando doesn't deserve team orders yet. I think, Lando lost position. Oscar overtook him. There are rules that allow them to race, and Oscar took the position on merit. So, but again, you've got two number ones. You're going to have these problems. But if you're going to decide as a team, as an organisation, to have this idealistic two number one view, then you have to know how to manage it, and you have to be absolutely on it. And they're not. They're clearly not on it. So, yeah. Game's the game, and they're not playing it very well at the moment. Right. I'm going to spend a little bit of time now with chat. First of all, though, super chats. Thank you to everyone who super chatted. Very kind of you. Thank you, Karthik. McLaren not swapping in the end is quite telling. And I just don't get it. I just don't get why I don't think that's a lot to ask of Oscar. I don't. Sorry. I don't. And I think he would have been, I think he would be receptive of that. Because he'd get it. But the way Oscar's talking, which is a great mindset, to be fair, he still feels like he's got a chance in the Drivers' Championship. Which, I mean, look at how Red Bull are performing at the minute. But I just think that's when the team just need to... No, we're your employers, right? We are the ones giving you the car, right? You race for us. So, we think this is a completely fair ask because of the gap that you have. That is the only reason. Going into 2025... that's a different story entirely. We think, I think that would be fine. I think that would be completely fine. I really do. I think it would be shrewd of Oscar to have accepted that, but they're not asking that of him, clearly. So again, idealistic view. What is so insanely poor about this take, James? I'd love. I'm completely happy to have people disagree with me. This is not a cult. We're entitled to our own opinions. But I'd love to actually, when people say your takes are insanely poor, I'm like, why don't you tell me the take in the comments so I can actually respond to what you're telling me I am saying that is wrong? At least give me the ability to, understand what you are disagreeing with me about. Thank you, V, for the super chat. I said Ferrari were dressed in black for a funeral, and they've dunked on everyone. Not their own funeral. And now Leclerc has made 2 deals with the devil for Monaco. Oh, yeah, because things were not good for Charles after Monaco. So maybe he has sold his soul for these 2 banging performances. But what a pair of performances. Yeah, Red Bull's funeral. Ouch. Thank you, Lucas. Russell's fail at the start helped Charles big time. Had he gotten stuck behind him after lap 1, he couldn't have pulled off his strategy this cleanly. Yeah, look, butterfly effect, Lucas. You're right. I think George breaks a little bit earlier, then he's going to be able to crack on and probably do all right in the race. Obviously, race pace wise for Mercedes wasn't great, so I'm feeling like he probably would have still ended up behind Sainz by the end of the race, but we'll see. We will see. Time will tell on that one going forward, because of course, like I say, every race is going to be different, which is great, because we just don't know who's going to be quick going into each weekend. Thank you, Say, as well. Leclerc picks up an impressive 7th victory as Ferrari was cooking. Red Bull easily deserves Klanger team pretty damn bad. That indeed, yes. 7th victory there. Charles Leclerc should have more. So you look at the amount of poles he's got and not converted, but finally it's a non-pole that he has converted. So, grazie ragazzi to old Charles Leclerc. anyone who doesn't back, I'm all for everyone having their own opinion and their own perspective on sport. But if you don't back Charles Leclerc, damn, I do not want what you're having. Thank you, winner loser. Total conspiracy theory. But Red Bull, after losing Newey and others, are scrapping the rest of 2024 and 25 to focus on a repeat of 22 for 2026. Well, obviously the regulations for 26 have not been finalised. The aerodynamic regulations haven't, anyway. The engine regulations have. But the aerodynamic ones have not. So, but the thing is, Red Bull didn't even, like, they actually started on 22 relatively quite late, but Adrian Newey, with his knowledge of ground effect, kind of gave them a head start, even though they didn't actually have a time head start. And he set them on the path to success, but clearly at some point they did need to deviate from that path to stay at the front, and it's not happened somehow. So, look, I think Jos's words after all the Christian Horner scandal stuff early in the season have turned out to be quite correct, haven't they? Quite correct indeed. Thank you, Maximilian. Bonsoir, Tomo Aston will be back next year. I hope you're right, Maximilian, because it's tough to watch. It is tough to watch. Arters, why wasn't Haas a viable option for Science considering the engine tyres? Also, do you think a Joe replacement is possible? So, why wasn't Haas a viable option for Science? Look, I think Science was always going to be more interested in a project with a higher ceiling. As much as Haas have pace right now, there is kind of an enforced ceiling at Haas. Kind of like there is at Racing Bulls, because of their connections to Ferrari, and they just don't have the budget. Williams has a more... Even if you could say, that Williams is slower than the Haas at the minute, I think they have more of a potential height to their ceiling. So, I get why Sainz... And look, since they brought the upgrade, that's 2 Q3s for Alex in Zandvoort and Monza. Couldn't be more different tracks. And 2 point scoring finishes as well. So, wait, no, he didn't score points in Zandvoort because they disqualified him from qualifying. But either way, if they hadn't disqualified him, he probably would have finished in the points. So... Williams' uptick in performance has kind of come in line with this upgrade and getting weight off the car. And it is these numbers that James presented to Science being like, look, if we get a bit of weight off, we're going to cook somewhat in the upper midfield. And they have done. So whatever they did show Carlos was more impressive than whatever anyone else showed him, basically. Also, do you think a Joe replacement is possible? Well, again, Arters, it feels like... From everything I'm hearing, they are using Joe's car as a bit of a test bed to just chuck things out and see what works, see what doesn't. And not worrying too much about where he actually finishes. So, if that is the approach that they're taking, maybe it isn't. But again, I've heard this cited multiple times by old Teddy Kravitz, who's literally on the floor, on the ground. So... If that is the case, then bringing in a replacement isn't going to serve them anything. So I don't think they'll replace him. I think Joe should become a reserve driver for next year into the Audi era. I think that makes so much sense. And bring in a certain driver who we will talk about in this week's video. Thank you, Lucas. I think you're underrating Lewis against Charles. When he has a car underneath him, he will perform to such a high level. Love your vids. Thank you, Lucas. Look, and you could be right. I think Lewis obviously has never driven a non-Mercedes powered car before. He's going to be going into a brand new environment, new team around him. Charles is so ingrained into Ferrari, has been for a long time. There is no doubt that Lewis has incredible ability still. But I think Charles, on his day, with his experience at Ferrari, will beat Lewis more times than he won't. And I think you're underrating Charles relative to Lewis, which I think is easy to do because Lewis is statistically the greatest of all time and still, especially in the races, can deliver some worldies. But George has been consistently better than him over a lap, and I think Charles is better than George over a lap. So, look, time will tell. And I think Lewis will still performed to a high level, don't get me wrong, but I do think that Charles will do even better. I do. Thank you, Sai. It's also crazy to think that 3 teams could leave Baku leading the championship. And by that, I guess you mean Constructors' Championship. Yeah, that's crazy. That is absolute crazy. But yeah, Ferrari put themselves right that, quick start, slow middle, but they're back cooking again. And if that pace goes to Baku, then they could. Yeah, I mean, if Red Bull have an absolute stinker, Ferrari could literally jump Red Bull in Baku in the constructors as well, which would be absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. F1 edits, thank you. Tomo, do you think Lando should be given priority? Look, again, already said my piece on that. I think that after Hungary, there should have been a conversation where, like, right, we're not going to ask you to give up wins for Lando, but if you're running in convoy and you can't get past the driver ahead, give Lando the points. And I don't think that's too much to ask of Oscar Piastri, given the context of the situation. If Oscar's winning and Lando's behind, I wouldn't ask that of Oscar to give up a win that he's got on merit for Lando. I think the context in Hungary, the only reason Lando was ahead was because McLaren were covering a potential undercut that wasn't even a thing in the end. But I think that would have been fair to ask of Oscar. And I think they should have reversed the positions today at the end, because what does it matter to Oscar whether he's second or third? There you go. Eduardo, thank you. McLaren doesn't know how to win championships, and Percival, Charles Leclerc, is the best driver, better than Max Emiliano. That is it. Ferrari haven't been able to give Charles the car, but the only guy really that we've seen go toe-to-toe with Max and actually be able to hold their own in combat with Max. I mean, 2021 was obviously chaos. But Charles Leclerc, if I had to pick any driver to go toe-to-toe, wheel-to-wheel with Max, I would pick Charles Leclerc, because we've seen it so many times. We've seen him get one over on Max. We've seen Max get one over on him. But I think they know they've been racing each other their entire lives. And I think I wouldn't back any other driver more than Charles Leclerc to go toe-to-toe with Max and beat him. And I think Max is the best driver in F1 right now. So I would pick Charles. Max is miles better than Charles. I mean, Yannick, you do know what miles better means, right? That the implication of miles better is that, like, it's not even close, which is a factually incorrect thing to say. Pondon, do you stand by your P5 ranking of Leclerc mid-season? Wait, what? In terms of Leclerc being... Did I rate him P5? Yeah, because I did Max, Nico, Lando, Oscar, Charles. Yeah, I did. I mean, I think he's been... I think he's been better since. I think he might be higher than P5 by the end of the season. I think Lando might be a bit lower than where I put him. Nico maybe as well. Nico had a really good first half of the season, but it's started to get a little bit... I think he'll drop out of my top 5 by the end of the season, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Pondon. There's still 8 races to go, mate. There's still 8 races to go. 21 was crazy when you look back at it. Crazy. Thank you, Marek. I don't always send super chats, but when I do, it's on Charles Ferrari victory. Sorry for posting it this late after a Ferrari segment. Thank you, Marek. Very kind of you. Appreciate that. It's good vibes. Good vibes all round. Come on. Good vibes all round. Okay. Love it. Thank you, winner loser. Is Oscar to Lando what Max was to Daniel? An experienced driver who has championship potential, gets a new younger teammate who is able to very quickly catch up in terms of pace. Yeah, look, people will be quick to say, "Oh, Oscar's miles worse than Max," right? Just to quote the chat. Yeah, I mean, there are parallels for sure. You would say that Daniel had usurped Seb and taken Red Bull by the horns, no pun intended, and put him in a really good position, and then Max comes in and does what he does, and 2018 Daniel was very unlucky. I think Daniel, without the engine issues that he has, him and Max were very close on performance, which is, I think Oscar and Lando are very close on performance. So yeah, I think there are parallels, and does Lando feel? Ricciardo left Red Bull because he didn't feel the love. Does Lando feel the love? Will he continue to feel the love at McLaren? Oscar's come in and made his life difficult. Lando did the business against Ricciardo, who everyone thought would come in and take over and be number one. He held his own more than against Carlos Sainz, but Oscar's come in and delivered on so much of that potential that was talked about at length in the junior formulas. Prima engineers saying that he's at least as good, if not better, than Charles Leclerc from what they saw. I think Oscar's proving why there was so much hype about him. So yeah, it's a difficult moment. It is. It's a difficult moment for Lando Norris. Very difficult. 13.3 in quali. Well, look, what's the average gap, Adam? Tell me the average gap, and then I'll be a bit more interested. Because really, that's why I kind of stopped doing the head-to-heads on Twitter, because I was like, actually, a lot of the time, just having a qualifying head-to-head doesn't really tell you useful information. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. So yeah, it could be going into 2025. It's just all in the air. I have no idea how I'm going to try and predict the 2025 Formula One season. That is just, I don't even know. Thank you, Dan. And by the way, Bortoletto, I know he got the headlines with the last to first, but I'd say that his sprint was more impressive. Also, Dirksen was super impressive. Yeah, Dirksen was quality this weekend, wasn't he? Look, Gabriel Bortoletto, I'll give you a little spoiler. If you've got an hour and 37 into this live stream, which is dedication, so thank you so much for listening and watching and supporting what I do. Much appreciated. So this week's video is going to be about Gabriel Bortoletto, because it's how do they keep hold of him, McLaren? If Bortoletto goes and wins F2 this year, he will have won back-to-back Formula 3 and Formula 2 titles, which Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Oscar Piastri have done. Very, very high company. How do McLaren keep him? Because they've got Oscar and Lando, who seem set. Maybe if Lando doesn't feel loved, maybe entertains seats elsewhere for 26 onwards, and maybe that's where Bortoletto comes in alongside Oscar Piastri, maybe. But if Bortoletto does that, how do McLaren keep hold of him? It is potentially a bit of a problem that they've got, because it's a good problem, but it's still a problem. If Bortoletto is that guy, which back-to-back F3 and F2 titles would suggest he is, what does he do? What does he do? Does he get a seat at Sauber? Bonotto's interested, apparently. He's managed by Fernando Alonso. A14 management, Gabriel Bortoletto is. Joined the books in 2022. The reason I know this is because after that sprint last to join 8th, dead heat with Dennis Hauger, I was like, right, I've got to do a video about Gabriel Bortoletto. And so I started scripting it last night. And then I woke up this morning, and I woke up a bit late, I'll be honest. It's weekend, okay? Give me a break. And he'd won the F2 feature race from last. So I was like, wow, okay. I've already written many hundred... How many words have I written in the script, actually? Let me just check. Script. I can't type today. How many words... I'm in the wrong email. Let me change to... Why is that email not on there? Hang on, give me a sec. I just want to see how many words I've already written in my script about Gabriel Bortoletto for this week's video. Right, Google Docs. There we go. Right, I've already written... Wait, where does it tell me in Google Docs how many words I've written? Well, I've done two full pages in Google Docs, and I've still got loads to do because I haven't really written about his junior career too much. But yeah, I've already written a couple of pages, so I need to finish that off, and that will be this week's video. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. Right. Captain Peanut, F1 will not be the same without K-Mag next year. He does offer entertainment, doesn't he? K-Mag does bring the vibes. You cannot doubt that. You cannot question the vibes of Kevin Magnussen. But I think his time, I think it's come to a nice conclusion. Okay, we got him back. We thought we'd lost him, forever to the US and IMSA and all that. But we got him back. So yeah, shout out. But yeah, again, well, we'll talk about Bortolao in my video, because what an insane weekend that was for Gabriel after an absolute shocker in qualifying on Friday. He's done bits. Right, 1 hour 40 minutes. Damn, this might be the longest Chinwag to date. So I'm going to wrap it there. Thank you all for joining wherever you are in the world. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting what I do. I do appreciate it. And don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed. Comment as well. Rate Apple Podcast, Spotify, 5 stars. Do all that good stuff. My name's Tommo. Thanks again.